Well, welcome everyone to our next public meeting with regard to high-speed rail between Dallas and Fort Worth. We very much appreciate all of you taking time to be with us today. We have two public meetings, one today and one tomorrow. You'll hear more about. The team has worked really hard since our second round of public meetings. Um, we have applied a whole host of technical information with regard to the technologies moving forward, and we have applied a whole host of criteria and engineering to the options that you've seen to get us closer to a consensus position on a few technologies and a few options to then go into the more formal environmental process. So again, thank you all for taking the time to be here. We have a short presentation to bring you up to speed on progress since the second round of public meetings, and we look forward to any questions or concerns that you have with regard to this important project. So Rebecca, do I turn it back over to you?
Brendan will take over from here.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Michael. During this presentation, we will cover many topics related to the study. These topics include a study overview, information on public and agency engagement efforts, an update on our analysis of alignments and technologies resulting in our phases of alignments and recommendations, and information pertaining to next efforts, as well as an opportunity to provide comments about the project. Next section will provide an overview of the project objective, process, and work efforts. The primary study objective is to evaluate high-speed transportation technology options between downtown Dallas and downtown Fort Worth. This includes analyzing both alignment and transportation mode options between the two cities. This objective includes finding ways to connect the Dallas-Fort Worth region to other proposed high-performance passenger systems in Texas, such as the Texas-Oklahoma Passenger Rail Study, generally following the Interstate Highway 35 corridor, and the Dallas to Houston high-speed rail project, as shown on the map to the right. Also, the project will investigate ways to enhance connections to the regional transportation systems, including automobile, bus, rail, bicycle, and pedestrian networks. An additional objective is to obtain federal environmental approval to design and implement the project. The stated objectives will be analyzed in the study area as shown on this map. This area is generally bounded by State Highway 121 and State Highway 183 to the north, Interstate Highway 35E to the east, downtown Fort Worth to the west, and U.S. Highway 287 and State Highway 303 to the south. The Dallas-Fort Worth High-Speed Transportation Connection Study is divided into two phases. We are currently in phase one. The purpose of the first phase is to analyze all reasonable alternatives regarding alignment and travel technology. This first phase has also included research on existing and emerging high-speed transportation technologies. The second phase will advance recommendations of phase one through an engineering and environmental analysis as prescribed by the National Environmental Policy Act. The second phase will include conceptual and preliminary engineering tasks, as well as financial and project management plans, concluding with a decision by the federal government regarding project next steps. In phase one, the project team has used a 3-level screening process to pare down the initial vast number of possible options to a select few. The process, as depicted on this graphic, began with identifying all reasonable alternatives. Next, the first level of evaluation for the alternatives determined whether or not the alternative met the project purpose and need. Of the initial 43 alignments and 5 technologies evaluated in level 1, 23 alignments and 4 technologies proceeded to the second level of evaluation. Level 2 screening evaluation focused on identifying any major flaws which may preclude the alternative from being built. Of these alternatives, 10 alignments and 3 technologies advanced to level 3, which involves a more detailed evaluation of the alternatives. The project team is currently completing this step, and we need your help. As we discuss the preliminary level 3 screening results, please take the time to review the results and provide your thoughts and comments. The information gathered will be very, very helpful as the project team makes recommendations for a limited number of alternatives to advance to phase 2 of this study. The initial 43 distinct alignments and corridors evaluated in the first level of screening were grouped into 5 families of options. These 5 families shown on this map are generally identified as the Trinity Railway Express alignments in purple, the Trinity River alignments in gold, the Interstate 30 alignments in dark blue, the State Highway 180 alignments, which are very near the existing Union Pacific Railroad alignment in red, and the State Highway 303 alignments in light blue. After the first level of screening, the 23 alignments shown on this map were advanced to the second level of screening. The Trinity Railway Express, Trinity River, and State Highway 303 family of alignments were eliminated from further consideration. The alignments evaluated in level 2 belong to the Interstate Highway 30 and State Highway 180 family of alignments. After the major flaw evaluation of alignments in level 2, as well as consideration of stakeholder and public input, 10 alignments advanced into the third level of screening as shown on this map. This final level of screening, the project team will more detailed evaluation. Later in the presentation, we will share the detailed criteria used to screen these alternatives along with the draft recommendations resulting from this analysis. I'll pause a moment for you to do this along with On this next slide, you'll see the initial 5 transportation modes or technologies considered for this study as graphically depicted here. These initial modes of travel include conventional trains, higher speed trains, which are faster than conventional trains but slower than high-speed trains, and high-speed rail trains, which are the passenger trains proposed for the Dallas to Houston system, magnetic levitation, or maglev for short, train technology, and Hyperloop technology, which incorporates a passenger or cargo pod moving in a near vacuum tube. In addition, the project team considered other emerging high-speed transportation technologies. Conventional passenger rail was eliminated in level 1 screening, and higher speed trains, along with other emerging high-speed technologies, did not advance beyond level 2. Only high-speed rail, maglev, and maglev technologies advanced to the third level of screening evaluation. We will share our draft recommendations on travel technologies in this presentation. With that, I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm Rebecca Hernandez with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth High-Speed Transportation Connection Study, there are many opportunities for the public and governmental agencies to review, comment on, and participate in this study. There are various types of public and agency engagement strategies used in this study. To date, the project team has held well over 90 meetings and briefings with various partners, stakeholders, international technology experts, and interested parties. 2 series of public meetings have been held for this study, the first being in September 2020 and the second series in January 2021. Responses to questions and comments from previous public meetings, as well as responses to frequently asked questions, are available on the study website at nctcog.org/DFW-HSTCS. Our engagement strategies have also included meetings with elected officials in the region, and so far, 3 elected officials meetings have been held. On a monthly basis, the project team meets with the Federal Transit Administration and the Federal Railroad Administration to discuss the study's progress. Frequent technical work group meetings comprised of city staff and transportation agencies within the study area have provided guidance to the study process and recommendations. Other engagement efforts have included a technology forum and meetings with government resource entities and transportation agencies and community organizations. The project team has also released monthly newsletters since February 2021 to provide updates on study progress and future engagement opportunities. These newsletters also serve as a resource highlighting interesting aspects of the high-speed study. To sign up for these newsletters, visit the study website and click on the blue heading titled Sign Up to Receive Updates and Meeting Notices. You can also see the link here on the presentation. Additionally, as part of the Level 3 effort, we are asking you to review the remaining Level 3 alignments and provide your feedback at your own convenience by using an interactive online tool as shown in the graphic to the right. Again, to access this interactive tool, visit the study website at nctcog.org/DFW-HSTCS. Your feedback and input is very helpful to us. The project team also offers additional opportunities to learn more about the study. The team is available to provide study information at special events or to groups or organizations wanting to learn more about the study. Please contact me, Rebecca Hernandez, using the contact information provided here. And please provide your feedback on all of the Phase 1 draft recommendations by the end of the public comment period, which is June 18th, 2021. At the end of this presentation, we'll provide you with information on how to make your comments. Please continue to access the project website for study updates and future meeting information, again, here at this link, nctcog.org/DFW-HSTCS. And now I will hand it over to Chris for an analysis update.
Well, I'm Chris Masters with HNTB. The next section will discuss aspects of the detailed analysis performed as part of the Level 3 screening evaluation. Preliminary design concepts for each alignment alternative were developed to inform the Level 3 screening process. Specific alignment locations and right-of-way widths will be developed in Phase 2 of this study, building upon the conceptual engineering already developed for each alignment. Additionally, environmental constraint maps were developed for the study area to help identify sensitive areas and potential impacts. A technology forum was held to educate the high-speed transportation industry about the project and to obtain information from industry experts to inform the high-speed technology screening and design for this study. The final recommendations developed from input received at the forum were reviewed by independent experts and applied to the technology screening process. As part of the Level 3 screening, the project team considered the following opportunities for alignments along the Interstate Highway 30 corridor. Between downtown Fort Worth and Cooper Street in Arlington, the Texas Department of Transportation is getting ready to initiate the phase for the ultimate redesign of the highway infrastructure. This presents the opportunity for the high-speed transportation system to be designed in coordination with the highway design, possibly incorporating the high-speed transportation corridor within the footprint of the highway infrastructure as an integrated transportation corridor. Alternatively, the high-speed transportation system could be designed along the periphery of the interstate highway to minimize potential conflicts with highway main lanes. For the section of Interstate Highway 30 between Cooper Street and Arlington and downtown Dallas, the highway main lanes and frontage road system have already been substantially improved to the ultimate configuration. In this case, the high-speed system could also be designed along the periphery of the interstate highway to avoid the existing freeway infrastructure. Are there other opportunities that the project team could explore in this section? One such consideration is potentially replacing the managed lanes in the center of the highway with this high-speed transportation system. The project team is considering all of these options. We continue to work closely with the Texas Department of Transportation to refine the preliminary alignment concepts prior to starting the next level of preliminary design in Phase 2. To supplement the Level 3 alternative screening evaluation process, The project team began looking at how each of these alignments could connect to the urban areas of downtown Fort Worth and downtown Dallas. These urban center connection concepts were developed independent of the level 3 alignments because of the complex nature of the dense existing and planned infrastructure surrounding each of the downtown areas. As stated previously, these urban center connection concepts are independent of the alignment alternatives and can be adjusted to facilitate connection to any of the level 3 alternatives that are recommended for advancement into phase 2. We're seeking feedback on other ideas for ways to connect to the urban centers. Please share your thoughts with us. The project team has developed a list of pros and cons for the current connection options, which will be further refined in the next phase. These graphics show the preliminary urban connection concepts for both downtown Fort Worth on the left and downtown Dallas on the right. Fort Worth Central Station, noted on the graphic, is the location identified on the graphic as a preferred identified station for a high-speed transportation station. Each of the different colored lines represent connection options between this station and the level 3 alignments. An additional station location for consideration at the northeast corner of the intersection between Interstate Highways 30 and 35 West is also shown, and that might provide a better connection to a future high-speed facility headed south out of Fort Worth. The proposed high-speed rail station from the planned Houston to Dallas project is also shown in the graphic to the right, the Dallas graphic. In preliminary concepts connecting the Dallas high-speed rail station to a Fort Worth to Dallas high-speed system are also shown in various colors. It is important to remember that these urban connection concepts are anticipated to either be on elevated structures or depressed below grade to avoid conflicts with the existing roadway and railways. We could use your help in identifying additional options not shown or any concerns you may have with the options that have been presented. I'll pause for you to review these graphics. In phase 2, the project team will evaluate the effects these urban center connections have upon existing or planned infrastructure and developments. We'll also be looking at environmental considerations, including visual and noise impacts, as well as effects on project costs. Economic development opportunities around high-speed transportation stations will also be considered. The stations anticipated for this high-speed system are not the same as the canopy and platform footprints of passenger rail systems that we're familiar with locally. High-speed transportation stations are typically larger structures that serve a regional multimodal transportation hub for passengers from large population centers, similar to a regional airport. With many examples around the world of attracting high-density development, these stations are expected to have significant economic development impact potential. Examples of existing stations and planned concepts around the world are shown here. The current concept for the Dallas-Fort Worth High-Speed Transportation Connections project includes 3 stations, 2 at each terminus, Dallas and Fort Worth, and 1 in the vicinity of the corridor midpoint. Ian?
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ian Bryant with H&TB, and in this next section, I'll discuss the Level 3 screening criteria and the resulting Phase 1 recommendations. The next 2 slides show the Phase 1 Level 3 screening criteria used to evaluate the alternatives. The potential impacts to sensitive social, biological, or cultural areas were divided into 5 categories listed here. The description for each category is shown in the far right column of this table. These categories include considerations for potential displacements and impacts to wetlands, floodplains, parks, or historic resources. Potential community impacts were also considered through noise and visual categories. Additionally, evaluation criteria regarding the ability of the vertical profile alignment or profile to be used for different high-speed modes. I'll pause here for you to review the criteria and the descriptions. The final three major criteria considered in level 3 are constructability, cost, and operations. Constructability or operability were separated into 8 different categories, including the need for additional right-of-way, impact to transportation systems, both positive or negative, technology maturity, and impacts during construction. The project team developed order of magnitude construction costs for this project for the purposes of comparing alternatives. Operations were also divided into categories. These categories included total travel time, along with capability of technologies to accommodate steep grades and sharp curves, which gives flexibility in designing the system. Each category was assessed for the remaining alternatives. Pause again for you to review the criteria and the descriptions. As a reminder, here's a map showing the alignments evaluated in the level 3 screening. The yellow boxes shown illustrate the downtown areas where the urban connection concepts previously shown are located. The limits of alignments evaluated in level 3 are Beach Street on the west and Beckley Avenue on the east. Based on the level 3 screening ratings for each alignment alternative, the 3 highest ranked alignments were along the Interstate Highway 30 corridor. These alignments had the fewest impacts to structures and parks, the lowest potential for noise and vibration impacts, and the least potential adverse impacts to existing transportation infrastructure. Because these alignments hugged or could be within the interstate highway for most of the distance between the two downtowns, they potentially require the least amount of additional right-of-way. With these results, the project team is recommending these interstate highways recommending alignments advance into phase 2 of the study. These recommended alignments are shown in the graphic on this slide. For a majority of the distance between Fort Worth and Dallas, these alignments follow the same path. From west to east, all 3 alignments follow Interstate Highway 30 from Beach Street into Arlington. At this point, the alignments diverge to find different ways to navigate past the highway interchanges of State Highway 360 and President George Bush Turnpike. All 3 alignments converge once again in Grand Prairie, heading east along I-30 into the city of Dallas. The alignments leave the Interstate Highway corridor near Northampton Road to follow a path similar to the Union Pacific Railroad alignment as it approaches the Trinity River near Beckley Avenue. There's an opportunity for the alignment to be located on either the north or south side of the Union Pacific Railroad in this location. I'll pause again for a moment for you to review these draft alignment recommendations. For the transportation technologies or modes, the modes with the highest ratings were high-speed rail and Hyperloop. While high-speed rail ranked well across all technology maturity criteria, Hyperloop technology ranked well in the operational criteria, including fastest travel time. Of the 3 modes considered in this final screening level, maglev had the lowest ranking due in part to its high construction cost compared to the other 2 technologies. Based on these results, the project team is recommending both high-speed rail and Hyperloop advance into phase 2 of the study. The next 3 slides provide further reasoning to include both high-speed rail and Hyperloop in the second phase. The project team applied the Technology Readiness Levels, or TRL, evaluation standard from NASA to compare technologies and determine their relative maturity. This provides a basis to compare emerging technologies such as Hyperloop with proven technologies such as high-speed rail, which has been in operation for over 50 years in other parts of the world. The project team determined that Hyperloop technology is still in the developmental stage at a TRL of 6, with high-speed rail having several thousand miles of track being at a TRL of 9 in the implementation category. As Hyperloop technology is advancing rapidly, the project team is recommending to advance both the proven technology of high-speed rail and the evolving Hyperloop technology into phase 2. This creates the opportunity for Hyperloop technology to continue to develop over the next 2 years of this study. This project will benefit from having either technology as an option once phase 2 is complete. Should Hyperloop technology not develop as quickly as expected, high-speed rail will still be a viable technology for the corridor. Based on current information, the construction costs for both technologies are similar. As seen on this slide, the type of infrastructure and right-of-way requirements for both high-speed rail and Hyperloop are similar and require vehicles to operate on a bridge structure to separate them from other roadways and railroads. Given these similarities, the project team anticipates minor differences between the alignment design, meaning the effect of advancing two technologies into phase 2 instead of just one technology is minor from a design perspective. The project team would appreciate your input and feedback on both the phase 1 draft alignment and technology recommendations. Now that you've seen the evaluation process and phase 1 draft recommendations, we'd like to walk you through the next steps of this study. As Rebecca mentioned, we will accept public comments on the phase 1 draft recommendations through June 18th, 2021. The project team will continue coordinating with the Federal Transit Administration, Federal Railroad Administration, cities, transportation providers, and federal and state resource agencies. On July 8th, 2021, the project team anticipates requesting approval of the phase 1 recommendations by the Regional Transportation Council, pending input from the public and local stakeholders. Please be sure to contact us if you'd like a presentation of this high-speed transportation connection study to your group or organization. We're targeting our outreach to community groups in the remaining level 3 screening alignment corridors. We also plan to hold in-person events this summer as safety protocols allow. This summer, so please stay tuned as details are finalized. In late summer or early fall of this year, we anticipate initiating phase 2 activities. During this phase, the environmental analysis and documentation will be conducted in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act. While continuing public and stakeholder outreach and engagement throughout phase 2, the project team will also be developing preliminary engineering as well as financial and project management plans. Here's a graphical representation of phase 2 activities and where they fall in relation to each other. After a class of action determination by our federal partners, which determines the type of documentation required for the environmental analysis, public meetings will be held. Phase 2 is expected to take 2 years and be completed in the third quarter of 2023. And now I'll hand it back to Rebecca to take public comments.
Thank you, Ian. During this presentation, the project team has provided background on several elements of our phase 1 analysis. We sincerely appreciate your comments and feedback on any of these elements, especially our draft recommendations for advancement into phase 2. There are 2 primary methods to provide input during this comment period, which again is open through June 18th. And comments received prior to June 18th will be considered and a response will be provided. Comments received after June 18th may be considered, but will not be considered part of the official project record. For those participating online now, comments can be entered electronically by clicking Join the Podium and submitting your question or comment, which will be read aloud. And electronic comments can also be entered on our project website. Comments can also be submitted by mail to P.O. Box 5888 Arlington, Texas 76005. For more information or to sign up for project notices, please visit our project website. The project team would like to thank you for your time and interest. Please provide your comments and opinions through the options provided. Your input is welcomed and very valuable to the project's success. And now I will go over instructions for those on the phone or online. We will be opening up the phone line for public comment or questions. For those on the phone, please press 0 to speak, and we will request your city and zip code. Then you'll be placed in queue. You will still be able to hear the meeting while waiting in queue. For those who are listening online, the online platform is open. You have access to type in questions or comments. And just a reminder, if and are just joining us to gain access online, visit nctcog.org/DFW-HSTCS and follow the link to today's meeting. And as a reminder, to participate on the phone, dial 855-756-7520, and that's extension 72698 pound, and press 0 if you wish to speak. And first, do we have any calls in queue? Okay, we do not have calls in queue. How about on the online platform?
We do have a few questions. I will start with Kate from Fort Worth. How do I make a request to have someone come and talk to my neighborhood association about this project? And she also asks, is there a deadline for the community to give input?
Thank you. That's a great question. Online, you can email us online request or the general email address here. You can see if you are watching online, hst_dfw@nctcog.org. And I'll be happy to schedule that. My name is Rebecca Hernandez. And then comments are open through June 18th.
Another question from the online podium. Kathy from Dalworthington Gardens asks, well, she says, my major concern about Hyperloop has nothing to do with being able to move pods quickly, but the loading and unloading of pods and throughput of passengers. To me, Hyperloop seems more like loading and unloading gondolas, which would be slower with fewer people, rather than trains, which are faster and move more people.
So this is Michael Morris. I kicked off the meeting today, and I apologize I didn't introduce myself. I think it's an excellent question. What has been pilot tested is the portion within the tube, the interface with regard to the area at a station where, in this case, people getting into the particular pod and then be integrated within the tube that is under the vacuum associated with it. That is the major element that the Hyperloop companies are interfacing with right now. The companies, half a dozen of them, have different ways for that pod to proceed through the tube, and we are all anxious to see the interface capabilities. You need to think of Hyperloop as going to an office building with 8 or 10 banks of elevators, where the elevator is on demand and you're loading lots of elevators all at the same time. When it comes to the high-speed train, there's a single train with several doors, and you're loading a single train with several doors all at the same time. So you're very correct. It's one mode. That one mode carries all people, and lots of modes and modes in parallel that is being interfaced together. Now, the work Ian was talking about, the work is technology is changing very quickly. So we are proposing to you a position that we have our cake and eat it too. We keep 2 modes into the environmental process. We have to go through our federal partners to get their consensus on that. But we wish to first hear what the consensus is of our citizens within the region. And we obviously have one mode that's been around for 54 years, never had a fatality, pretty dependable mode, as Ian was describing. And you have another mode with half a dozen companies extending unbelievably advanced transportation technology components. And the question is going to be, where are those companies 2 years from now. So the type of thing that our caller is highlighting is one of several items that the Hyperloop technology would need to advance to get a higher score in the NASA Technology Index for it to be considered in the real world to be the implemented mode. But at this particular point in time, we have time on our side, given we still have to do the geometric design and the full comprehensive environmental impact. So why we wish to have our cake and eat it too. We share your concerns. We did not know in advance if Hyperloop would make it to the minimum threshold, the Hyperloop technology. Our assessment and the assessment of an independent panel has confirmed that it is advanced to this particular level. We're proposing it needs to advance more to be the real mode of choice. But I think the caller has flagged one of the interface areas that we would have to see more advanced before we would be recommending 2.5 years from now what is the best mode to proceed with. So I very much appreciate the comment.
I'll add one aspect of describing the technology. The Hyperloop technology itself, the infrastructure consists of a main tube, which is the main line, main tube is the main off-ramps. So when the tubes operate, when the pods operate, they actually move off of the main line for loading and unloading. So whatever amount of time is necessary to load or unload does not impact the traveling of the other pods, and those who don't need to stop will not stop at a destination. So unlike a train who sometimes sits at a station with dwell time and may impact how long it takes to move forward, these move off of the main line. So we're learning more about the technology as we advance, as Michael said, and we'll evaluate more in the next phase.
Another question from the podium. Kevin from McKinney, Texas asks, how will replacing the managed lanes on Interstate 30 affect traffic volumes and congestion?
Well, we first have to determine, is there even an advantage of placing the columns in the existing location of the managed lane? So we're given the flexibility in the environmental process, not now. Is there any cost advantage, any environmental advantage, any proximity of noise to residences? So we really see if in fact we were to place the columns where the existing reversible managed lane is, does it gain any environmental stewardship or environmental sensitivity or cost savings or visual items that may be advantageous? So that's what our consultants will score. The caller is correctly asking, if you flip the coin over, what are you then losing by no longer having the managed lane? So we would then have to okay, we no longer have the reversible managed lane, so this is the impact reversible managed on the traffic stream to additional congestion or additional noise introduced with the higher volume closer to the residential homes, or the ability of reducing choice for our citizens to not be able to go at a higher speed under a dynamically priced facility. And then you would then have to make the decision, is the trade-off of environmental benefits, cost benefits, whatever the criteria that demonstrates the benefit to be, is it greater or worse than the loss of those benefits with regard to losing the capacity on the roadway system? We think it's an innovative idea. In our profession, you never take a lane. So we understand that us proposing this particular option may not be the best path forward, since we use taxpayers' monies to build it and it's a very successful lane. But we don't know yet what we're up against with regard to our environmental stewardship when high-speed rail leaves the Interstate 30 corridor and is on either side of the UP main line in West Dallas. So to be sensitive to that neighborhood, we wish to keep this particular option, but we concur with the commenter that the introduction of the loss of the reversible facility may in fact be worse than the gain we have with regard to the environmental stewardship of the alignment. In the western side of the corridor, it's a little more straightforward because that whole freeway from Cooper Street west has to be totally rebuilt. So it's not as complicated or difficult a public policy question, but the commenter correctly is flagging this may not be the best path. Sorry to use the word path. This may not be the best approach, but until we know more what our options on both sides of the UP main line are, we don't know what the trade-off not. Therefore, we're including it as a concept in the operations. Ian, Chris, or Dan, do you wish to add anything or not to that comment?
I would just add that in addition to the additional analysis we'll do, determine that effect, we also, these decisions aren't being made in a vacuum. So we are working with TxDOT, with the Dallas District and Fort Worth districts, and we'll continue to coordinate with them as we move forward and consider these innovative ideas.
A question from John in Baldwin, Missouri. How will the project team evaluate the societal and economic impacts of the system once implemented?
That's a good question. Through our 3-level evaluation that we've done in phase 1, we have had quite a few environmental criteria that we analyzed. With level 1, we started really at a high level, and as we moved through to level 3, we've really honed in on the specific corridors, looking at the right-of-way footprint. So there's been some initial look at it as we've vetted the alignments. However, moving into phase 2, we'll obviously be getting into the National Environmental Policy Act environmental documentation process. Whether that is an environmental impact statement or an environmental assessment, we will be looking in detail for the specific alignments that are moving forward to see what exactly those impacts would be, societal as well as economic, as well as any potential development impacts. And then also, in addition to just the technical analysis associated with that, we also will be obviously having a tremendous amount of outreach, both with stakeholders and the public as we move into phase 2 and throughout phase 2. And so we'll be looking for you to give us some feedback as well on any of your concerns. And as Rebecca mentioned, we do have a mapping tool on our website. So if you go to the website, that mapping tool allows you to zoom in. You can see exactly where the alignments that we're proposing for phase 2 are located. And you can drop a pin and leave a comment and let us know specific concerns that you have. And that'll obviously fit and help us as well as we move forward through the NEPA process.
Ian, the one thing I think we should talk about is our country does not have a lot of experience with high-speed rail. So when you look at the caller's question with regard to the impact to society, you start asking yourself some pretty sophisticated questions like, do I need to even live in the Dallas-Fort Worth region if I wish to work in the Dallas-Fort Worth region? Or how do I increase or viability of my transportation by either having an option to take high-speed rail, say in combination with high-speed rail to Houston? You also have citizens say, gee, I'd rather take high-speed rail than drive because I think it may be safer or something else. So I think the question is going to be a nice challenge for us. We obviously know all the societal elements in an environmental impact statement, but to some extent we have to tell this story about this independent utility, because we think high-speed rail between Dallas and Fort Worth is a good decision on its own. If in fact we have the benefit of high-speed rail between Dallas and Houston, Now we have some real system benefits that impact society, connecting the fourth and fifth, soon to be third and fourth largest regions. And then we're waiting to appear before the Texas Transportation Commission to take that downtown Fort Worth high-speed rail line down towards Waco, Temple, Killeen, Austin, San Antonio, and Laredo. Killeen, Austin, San Antonio. Now you have the state of Texas leading the nation in connecting maybe the 3 of the top 6 populated communities in the United States. And what impact to society does that have on job growth? So I think you as consultants have your hands full. You have your typical societal impacts of a project, but depending in the next 2 years, what we're able to do in parallel, we have the independent utility of our investment, but we'll be able to see hopefully high-speed rail move out between Dallas and Houston. And hopefully we'll be successful in the commission as they proceed with an environmental from Fort Worth to Laredo. You start getting some significant synergies. That's an interesting story. I can't think of any negative things, but it's an interesting set of positive societal elements that we would have to tell our story about in our phase 2 study and see if citizens support or like the ability of being in the third largest region, connected with high-speed modes to really a larger mega region, and what are those societal benefits? Dan, were you going to comment, Dan Lamers?
Well, Michael, you touched on some of what I was going to say, but I'll just emphasize it that the social and economic benefits go beyond just the Dallas-Fort Worth region. And Michael, you mentioned the state, but really it's going to be a national conversation. This is a potentially new way of getting people around the country. So this will have much larger implications socially and economically than just this region or the state of Texas. And I can't imagine that when something like this gets implemented, that there won't be many studies done to evaluate that. And I noticed that the question said at the end, after it's implemented. So there will undoubtedly be a lot of studies and things done to verify the assumptions that were made within our study to determine the actual impacts associated with it, though.
The next question comes from Sue in Grand Prairie. When you go into phase 2, will you plan with multiple routes in mind or just your top choice along Interstate 30?
The 3 levels of screening have shown us that the I-30 highway is a corridor, a viable corridor for this project. We consider it to be a corridor. So as we advance the design, you'll have many choices every step along the way. And choices, evaluate those choices with stakeholders throughout the entire corridor, whether it's one of the major interchanges that intersect the highway or what is adjacent to the highway, the configuration of the infrastructure, many different considerations will be there along every facet of the corridor. So no, there are multiple options, almost countless options that will work together to consider as we move throughout the corridor in the next level of design.
Yeah, Chris, I want to reinforce that point, especially since the item came in from Grand Prairie. The Regional Transportation Council is funding continuous frontage roads in Grand Prairie on Interstate 30 to increase the reliability of the freeway. As some incident or accident occurs on the freeway, we would have continuous frontage roads to move people around that particular traffic. Those frontage roads will draw economic development. So that economic development, as we learn about it, will influence our interest in minimizing the impact to whatever we're aware of along the corridor. So the more Grand Prairie government shares with us economic development elements as a result of frontage roads, the more our team can be sensitive to that particular element. You also have a very successful entertainment district in Grand Prairie. So we will be monitoring the success of the entertainment district You also have an unbelievably strong city of Arlington with huge economic development in its entertainment district. There may or may not be implications along Interstate 30 that we will need to be sensitive to as well. So reinforcing Chris's comment, if in fact we're on the public sector right away, we in real time can be sensitive to the information that we have at the time. And then we therefore know, since our mode will be around for 100 years, we know that'll then have influence on other land uses that then react to this particular alignment. And those are conversations we can have with our partners in Fort Worth, in Arlington, in Grand Prairie, parts of potentially Irving and a lot of Dallas as part of that conversation. So I think it's a very good question. Amanda, do you have anyone on the other technology?
We do not have any callers, but if you are on the telephone line and you wish to speak, please press 0. And we have someone to screen you. We'll ask for your name and city, and then we'll be able to connect you to the meeting.
The next question comes from Stephen in Dallas. How will this project be financed?
Well, we've already, begun innovative conversations with regard to the funding. We sent out a request for information for all the high-speed rail companies in the world to come and meet with us. We did that a few years ago. We have lots of interest by high-speed rail companies to come to our particular region. We purposely didn't want the revenue tail to wag the environmental transportation dog. So we have held off innovative funding things to not be influenced by that and to independently now move ahead on the benefits of the transportation project. Our communication with our board is we are seeking revenue sources that do not compete with other revenue that we need to build other transportation. That is our goal. So you have, high-speed rail funds in Washington, D.C. that can only go to high-speed rail. You have a new administration in Washington that wishes to advance infrastructure. We think our timing is perfect because you have a president who went home every day as a senator on Amtrak to his house. So you have someone that understands the importance of this type of technology. That may give us a leg up through some national competition and/or jobs program and/or stimulus program. So we're watching that program. We have terrific success with public-private partnerships. We have 2 major ones on the roadway side that have brought us, I think, something north of $6 billion, or $6 billion, the 635 and the North Tarrant Express project. We have already explored public-private partnerships with high-speed rail providers. We have an interlocal agreement with the current high-speed company, Texas Central Partners, that's building between Dallas company, Texaston. They have shown a great interest that if high-speed rail is the technology, how do they advance their technology from the downtown station further west? So we believe there's lots of options, especially with this administration focused on transportation. We are ensuring that we are taking an independent assessment of transportation and environmental impacts and not being influenced by the revenue side. But we will have our ear to the ground if in fact there's an opportunity, especially since we're within months of being in the environmental process. That often is the cutoff point by our national government to participate in funding programs. But I don't think we would be spending all the time and effort if we didn't think there was a path forward with regard to the implementation of high-speed rail. Maybe the final thought is rail between Dallas and Houston is being funded without any government support at this particular point in time. Anyone else wish to add anything there? Okay.
We have 8 comments in the queue. I want to let you all know that we will get to them on this meeting today, despite the 1 p.m. and we will continue to answer all of your questions. The next question does come from Daryl in Fort Worth. Has any consideration been given to use I-20 instead of I-30 as a route? If so, what are the pros and cons?
That's a good question. And as our study that we're working on and talking about today, really we didn't start from scratch. We built upon previous studies that we done within the corridor, looking at high-speed rail, high-speed technologies. And as part of those studies, there was a look at the I-20 corridor as a possible option. It is not included in our current study. Mainly due to a few reasons, and feel free to jump in with other options or other issues here, but there's some topography issues, and there's actually what we would call hills in that area of Dallas, and with high-speed transportation, you really are looking for transportation. You really as flat as you can be in order to get up to the speeds that are necessary and the grades that you have to adhere to. So that's an issue. Another issue obviously be travel time. Going from the downtown cores down to I-20 would obviously increase that travel time. So the more direct you can be, the better. And then really just serving the urbanized area as effectively as possible. So while there is a good amount of development down there, the density of development really is not the same as it is along I-30 or closer to the central part of the corridor. And it really reflects. We did look at SPUR 303 and US 287. So while not I-20, those were on the southern end of our study area, and that was reflected in that alignment as well. Those were kind of the negatives. Obviously, the positive is that it is an existing highway transportation corridor like I-30. So a possibility of integrating within that corridor like we are proposing along I-30.
The next comment is from Emmanuel in Alexandria, Virginia. As a transportation economist, I highly commend the North Central Texas Council of Governments and its consultant team on the selection of high-speed rail and Hyperloop as the 2 technologies to progress. I also agree with the NASA level 9 versus level 6 degree of current readiness. The next question that we have is from Stephen in Dallas. What is the anticipated level of ridership, and how does it compare with the existing level of ridership on the DRE?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is Brendan Wheeler with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We've done some very initial travel demand analysis in this phase 1 effort, really just to differentiate between the various modes and alignments we were looking at, trying to cull down from 5 technologies and 43 alignments down to a manageable number. We'll definitely be looking at this travel demand and ridership in phase 2. So we don't have actual ridership numbers, but we have seen some initial estimates of travel demand between the downtown Fort Worth and downtown Dallas that is quite significant, especially if they're tying into another high-speed mode in downtown Dallas heading south to Houston, or in downtown Fort Worth heading south along the I-35 corridor. So we have seen quite significant travel demand for this facility. And we do get this question quite a bit of how it affects the TRE ridership. From our initial look, we're really in 2 different markets here. The TRE market is more of a commuter. I believe it has about 10 stations along its alignment, and it takes about almost an hour to get from downtown Fort Worth, from the Fort Worth Central Station over to Union Station in Dallas. The high-speed study that we're looking at a maximum of around 20 minutes or so between downtown Fort Worth and downtown Dallas. So you're really serving 2 separate markets between these 2 different modes. So the high-speed corridor that we're looking at really does not pull too many TRE riders off of that alignment. since most people aren't taking it from downtown Fort Worth all the way to downtown Dallas, according to our numbers. But like I said, we'll do a lot more detailed analysis in phase 2 when we get to that point.
Brendan, if I could reinforce what you're saying, is a whole bunch of analysis was done to make sure we did not have a negative impact on the Trinity Railway Express, or better stated, what is our impact on the Trinity Railway Express? And does it result in our interest to maybe not have a high-speed rail connection? What is very clear is the Trinity Railway Express is like the arterial street. I need to get to a lot of different intersections. I need to stop along the way. You only have 3 stations on high-speed rail. You're going long distances. You may even have an inner city component to it, depending on connections. So the good news is, supporting this 2 different markets, the TRE is like the arterial street, and the high-speed rail is like the mega freeway, speed-wise. And part of the conversation in the environmental process for the consultants will be, you know, what is the negative impact we have to the TRE, and is there gain with the additional riders that we have on high-speed rail? And obviously, at least initial estimates are, and the ridership estimate is really the focus, and is really the environmental process. It says this is really a nice result. You get the benefit of high-speed rail, potentially with intercity connections, and it doesn't hurt as a result of your TRE, largely because very few people are taking it the whole way. They're using it as an arterial street. The other thing we know on the ridership side, in talking with other high-speed rail companies that have known for some time, is they've done their own independent ridership estimates, and they also think it's a significant ridership number between Dallas, Arlington, and Fort Worth. So we have some evidence it's strong. We have a lot of evidence that we're not hurting the TRE, and we have a lot of evidence from other high-speed rail providers around the world that high-speed rail between Dallas and Fort Worth is a pretty sweet connection. It's a pretty sweet when it comes to high-speed rail transit ridership.
I have a few questions from Micah in Dallas and Kathy in Worthington Gardens. They're very similar, so I'm going to group them together. The main question from Micah is, what is the economic impact potential for transit-oriented development in or near downtown Dallas and downtown Fort Worth sections of high-speed rail path? Specifically curious about the station locations being proposed and considered. And then the follow-up question is, do we know where the station locations are? And will there be just 2 in downtown Dallas and downtown Fort Worth?
So let me try to do this quickly and then turn it over to Ian. The high-speed rail station is known in Dallas. The station is known in high-speed rail station that is coming from Houston. Yes, there's a whole host of economic development associated with high-speed rail. Maybe Ian can talk about it more when he shows you those graphics of those high-speed rail stations in other communities. We had staff do a grassroots effort on the high-speed rail station in Fort Worth. Yes, Fort Worth wishes it to be north-south, basically in connection with its 9th Street Intermodal Center, where Amtrak, Greyhound, and their regional bus system are. So that too is known. The consultants have freedom in the environmental process to reevaluate the Fort Worth decision to see if there's not a better Fort Worth location, because of our interest and agreement to have either system integration to the high-speed rail to Houston or cross-platform transfer. To my knowledge, we're not looking at another high-speed rail station in the Dallas area. And yes, you should have the assumption that there is huge economic development potential around high-speed rail stations as evidenced by other high-speed rail in other parts of the world. Ian, would you wish to comment on this, please?
Sure, I'll expand just a little more on the economic development, the economic potential side. You know, as Chris showed in the slide he presented, some of the examples from around the world, these high-speed transportation stations really are very different from traditional light rail or commuter rail stations. They really are destinations in and of themselves. They are not only multimodal, but they're typically a large mix of land uses as well, with very high densities. So there's a huge opportunity for economic development around these stations, be it in downtown Dallas, downtown Fort Worth, or potentially in Arlington at that midpoint station. And you know, the thing is, it requires a lot of coordination. So it's not just if you build it, they will come. So we are coordinating currently with the cities, with stakeholders around these station areas, as well as the public. For instance, in Dallas, there is a current master plan being created for the Kay Bailey Convention Center. They're looking at opportunities there. There's obviously the freight rail, talking with Union Pacific. They're looking to do some reconstruction, add some additional lines going into Dallas there. There's a lot of development just occurring within that area of downtown Dallas. And the same on the Fort Worth side, as well as within Arlington, all the development that's going around those the stadiums. So as we continue to move forward into phase two, we'll be continuing to coordinate with all of these entities and really trying to coordinate all of these efforts to look to enhance those economic development opportunities.
Our next question is from Daryl in Fort Worth. It seems to me that the old Highway 80 might be a better alternative to Interstate 30 for several reasons, including redevelopment impact along the corridor and ease of acquiring right-of-way and traffic congestion during construction. What is your response to this?
The right-of-way width of this 180 corridor is more narrow than the I-30 corridor and poses some geometric challenges for staying within the existing transportation infrastructure. The geometry of our corridor that we evaluated does present some impacts to existing residential and industry commercial facilities. And also requires us to be very adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad for quite some distance. And we're expecting Union Pacific's desire that we preserve their corridor for future freight capacity, which supports several purposes within our country and our economics. We would be staying outside of their corridor. When we're outside of their corridor, we do introduce quite a few impacts to whatever is adjacent to the corridor. So there are quite a few more impacts along that corridor than along the I-30 corridor.
Yeah, our hope was that US 180 would be a good corridor because it made it into phase two. So like the caller's indicating, we were hopeful it would do well. But as you then apply the phase two criteria, as you just described it, Chris, it does much worse than the benefits in the I-30 corridor. But we were hopeful that the 180 corridor would be, but as you start putting engineering principles and design to it, it has negative impacts with regard to the proximity of that land use that's along the 180 corridors is what you're really advancing into these recommendations. Good idea. Unfortunately for us this time, it didn't work out.
This question is from PJ in Houston, and I am going to summarize it. Houston appears to be an important part of the planner's goal for making the Texas Triangle work well. First question is, why were two modes, maybe the high-speed rail and Hyperloop, not considered for getting to Houston? And then a second question is, why is Houston only being considered for an updated 1960s era Japanese high-speed rail system? Seems that this would slow down the Texas Triangle.
So it's important to flag that that question really doesn't apply to our particular corridor, since we're just focused on Dallas to Fort Worth with an Arlington station. With regard to Houston, you have a private sector company that wishes to fund that investment on their own. And they're going through the process within state government and the national government to be able to do so. They wish to advance high-speed rail in one of the most advanced high-speed rail technologies in the world. 99% reliability and no fatalities. 54 years with all the advanced phases of that. Texas Central Partners is the company, and that is the path forward that they have elected. I think if the person has interest, Rebecca, please let them continue to have discussions with Texas Central Partners with regard to how they interface in Houston. I think would be something we could help the caller with.
This question is from Kevin in McKinney, Texas. Please explain how the project and the design of I-30 West in Fort Worth will be combined. Which project would have priority if there are conflicts?
So we're already coordinating with the TxDOT Fort Worth District, and we have another workshop set up with him here in a few weeks. And the purpose of this workshop is to talk through what is important to TxDOT on that portion of the corridor before we get into the next level of design. So we'll identify what's important to them, and then geometrically, we will look at what's necessary for the high-speed transportation, and then work the two together. TxDOT does not yet have a contract with a consultant to develop the environmental schematic, but that is their next step. So as they enter into their solicitation in an upcoming period to develop that work, we will have already advanced the concept some, but we'll have advanced it with their input in mind. And concurrent with the next 2 years of our project, that consultant for TxDOT will also be advancing their environmental schematic. So we truly have an opportunity to advance preliminary engineering on both concepts at the same time to work together to create opportunity. And as far as timing for those projects, it depends on many factors for how this project goes and how their project moves forward as well.
Yeah, so I think, Chris, you really lay out what is a potential really interesting win-win. So yeah, so potential is we just take a traditional view. We're on columns. We avoid all the existing mainlands, and one approach to proceed with. But everything east of Cooper is the original toll road pavement and is totally replaced. It's, you know, north of 50 years old. So you just think through, what if we were able to build the freeway in that same right of way, but in a location that maybe resulted in the high-speed rail not to be on columns, or who knows what else may be able to lower the price or reduce the impact. The freeway has to be rebuilt anyway, so is there a way to put the high-speed rail, because of its grades and tangents, in a better place? And then, you know, the more friendly automobile lanes with different grades and tangents than what you have on high-speed rail could be flexed around that particular investment. But that decision will be made in partnership with TxDOT. Our partnership with TxDOT isn't going to do anything that's not in the best interest of the state. But it's an interesting situation of potentially building the high-speed rail at a much lower price, and those savings to actually help fund the freeway project. So it's an interesting opportunity, since the freeway has to be totally replaced anyway.
And this is our last question for this afternoon from Martin in Dallas. With the increasing capability and environmental soundness of driverless cars, will there still be a need for the level of high-speed rail for passenger travel?
So we are working independent of this project where high-speed, where autonomous vehicles is going. A lot of work right now on autonomous trucks. lots of you are buying lots of goods that are coming by trucks to our region, and we have 5 or 6 major companies with autonomous vehicles coming to Dallas-Fort Worth. With regard to that, we're still thinking the future has autonomous cars. You see a whole revolution moving towards electric vehicles. Electric vehicles is a requirement for an autonomous vehicle. You know, the question is going to be really the $1 million question for autonomous vehicles is, where do the autonomous vehicles go when they're not picking up their patron? Do they travel around the freeway and wait to be called, or do they go park somewhere? So we think there could still be a significant amount of pressure on our roadway pavement, maybe even more so with autonomous vehicles than without autonomous vehicles. But I actually think moving us towards autonomous vehicles actually moves us more independent mode choice, which helps us advance us to high-speed rail. If I really don't need my car in the traditional sense, and a larger portion of my trips are made by, say, technology companies like Uber or autonomous vehicle companies, I think it's going to naturally have us grow into more use of public transit and more use of our high-speed rail choice as well. So I think it's compatible. Huge increases in technology making us advance a really thoughtful process in transportation. But I think autonomous vehicles in no way hurts us with regard to the need or desire to have our high-speed rail investments. Rebecca, do we have any other questions on the phone or the other technologies we're using today?
No, we do not have anyone on the phone or any additional comments online. So that will conclude the presentation.
Any of our presenters wish to make a final comment or something to interface our message of today with regard to the thoughts of our commenters? Anything else?
Just wanted to thank everyone for their time, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, not only upcoming public meetings in phase 2, but hopefully in smaller group meetings and one-on-ones as necessary. Just feel free to reach out to us, and we can set up those meetings and address your concerns.
Chris?
And I'll
Thank
say,
you, Ian. Chris?
we genuinely want to hear from you. There are some questions we posed to you. There are some on how to get certain places, route certain portions of the alignment. We would like to hear your feedback. So please take the time to send in some comments through our online system, and we will consider every single comment as we advance the designs forward.
Yeah, this is a partnership with you. This isn't our study. We're representing your interest in this particular study. So, you know, if you need presentations to your groups, you want more information, you have more questions, remember we're going to June 18th. This isn't the last time for today. I'm going to call on Rebecca to remind us when our next public meeting is in this 2-part public meeting process. So you can tell your friends to get on. But this is a team. This is a bottom-up, grassroots, consensus building process. So building. I very much appreciate Chris's comments that, you know, you're a partner working for you. Please ask us questions and give us feedback. So Rebecca, when's our next one this week?
We will provide the same presentation tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. and check out the project website here, nctcog.org/DFW-HSCS, and there will be instructions how to and we watch online or over the phone for those who were not able to attend today. We also have many project handouts on the website, as well as recorded presentation and slides in English and Spanish of this presentation here today. So with that, we will conclude. Thank you again for your time and interest and participation. Thank you.